The banquet had all the makings of a royal fairy tale. Golden plates, candlelit halls, and dignitaries from around the world. But when Princess Catherine stepped into the room, everything shifted. It wasn't her gown that captured attention. It was the tiara. The lover's knot. Diana's tiara. The one that had vanished after her death and stayed locked away for nearly 2 decades. Now, it was back, glittering on Catherine's head, and the room held its breath. Camilla froze. The tiara wasn't just jewelry. It was memory, legacy, heartbreak. It had once crowned Diana's silent suffering, her quiet strength, and her graceful resilience. Now it crowned the woman the world had come to adore. And while the cameras flashed, Camilla's smile faltered. This wasn't just a fashion moment. It was a message. Years ago, when Queen Elizabeth II passed, the world assumed Camilla would inherit the most precious heirlooms. But the lover's knot didn't go to the Queen Consort. It went to Kate. And no one really saw it coming. Some said it was Elizabeth's final wish. Others believed Charles had intervened. Whatever the reason, Camilla was left watching, a step behind, again. The tiara, once considered too sacred to wear, had quietly re-emerged, not as a haunting reminder of tragedy, but as a radiant emblem of continuity. Princess Catherine didn't don the lover's knot to mimic Diana, nor to stir the past. She wore it to carry something forward, something unspoken, yet deeply understood. In that delicate, gleaming circle of pearls and diamonds, the world saw more than adornment. They saw a torch being passed. A legacy not lost, but living, reflected in Catherine's calm poise and unwavering grace. That evening, her presence was almost ethereal. When she entered the ballroom, conversations hushed, not out of protocol, but instinct. She moved with quiet dignity, and atop her head, the tiara sparkled like a whispered tribute. It wasn't her first time wearing it, but this night felt different. Charged. The past and present didn't collide. They harmonized. Diana's memory didn't overshadow Catherine. It embraced her. For the briefest of moments, the two felt inseparable. Camilla arrived soon after. She wore her own jewels, brilliant, historical, and steeped in tradition. But they lacked the emotional weight. Her diamonds glittered, but they didn't stir hearts. Her appearance was stately, yes, but somehow distant. Guests noticed it. One whispered, "She looked and she knew." Her eyes lingered on Catherine for just a second too long, before her gaze dropped. It was subtle, but telling. The room flowed on, champagne glasses clinked, speeches were delivered, polite laughter rippled across marble walls. But beneath the surface, something else simmered. Not jealousy, not confrontation, but a quiet reckoning. The past had returned, not to haunt, but to remind. Diana's tiara, her most iconic symbol, was back at the center of the royal stage. And with it came everything she stood for: grace under pressure, emotional truth, and a kind of strength that didn't need armor. Camilla had fought her way into the monarchy's acceptance, endured years of harsh headlines and public scrutiny. She had finally earned her crown. But on this night, that crown didn't feel like the one that mattered. It was Catherine, calm, radiant, and effortlessly regal, who seemed to hold the room's attention. She didn't demand it. She simply had it. And in the royal world, that kind of power is the rarest of all. The tiara itself was never just jewelry. It had crowned Diana during some of her most iconic and most heartbreaking moments. Now, resting atop the head of her daughter-in-law, it spoke again. Not of pain, but of persistence. Not of sorrow, but of remembrance. And Catherine, with her quiet elegance, let it speak for her. The internet, of course, ignited. Within minutes, photos of Catherine and Diana were placed side by side. "She's the new people's princess," read post after post. Not because she asked for it, but because she felt like it. The resemblance wasn't just in appearance. It was in aura. In how she carried herself. In the unspoken grace with which she navigated the spotlight. In her, The public didn't just see a future queen, they saw a legacy reborn. And Camilla? She may have worn the heavier crown, but she felt the absence of something she could never claim, the public's heart. Even now, after all these years, she remains a symbol of division. Not because she isn't capable, or kind, or dedicated, but because some shadows, no matter how far you walk, still follow. The lover's knot was never hers to wear. And that truth, though unspoken, hung in the air. In a careful move, Camilla had chosen the girls of Great Britain and Ireland tiara, a dazzling heirloom of Queen Elizabeth II. It was a powerful piece, rich with history and grandeur. On any other night, it would have dominated coverage. But the cameras weren't focused on it. They were locked on Catherine. The headlines didn't lead with tradition. They led with emotion. "Diana lives on," one magazine wrote. "Through Catherine, we remember." And that was the quiet shift. This wasn't about rank anymore. It wasn't about titles, or who sat on which throne. It was about trust. About connection. The monarchy had always been built on lineage, but now it was being reshaped by love. The love the public once had for Diana, now gently placed in Catherine's hands. Camilla still holds the title of queen. She still sits beside the king. But Catherine, she carries something heavier and more lasting. She holds the spirit of a woman gone too soon, the love of a nation still grieving, and the quiet promise of a different kind of royal future. And maybe that's why the tiara shimmered so brightly that night. Not because of the diamonds, but because of everything it meant. Some crowns are crafted in gold. Others are forged in memory. And Catherine, without ever saying a word, wore them both. Camilla looked every inch the queen, her posture regal, her smile measured, her gown perfectly tailored. The diamonds on her tiara sparkled under the chandeliers, and her presence carried the weight of royal tradition. And yet, something was missing. Despite the elegance, despite the title, her jewels failed to stir the heart. They dazzled the eye but left the soul untouched. Because across the room stood someone else, Princess Catherine, wearing a tiara not just made of diamonds, but of memory. The Cambridge lover's knot tiara didn't shine brighter than the others. It didn't need to. Its power came from what it symbolized. It once sat atop the head of Princess Diana, the woman who captivated the world with her vulnerability, her courage, and her unmatched grace. And now, decades later, that same tiara sparkled on the head of the woman married to Diana's son. It wasn't just jewelry, it was a whisper of history, an echo of love, and a powerful statement about legacy. Unlike necklaces or brooches passed around on rotation, royal tiaras are different. They are personal, permanent. Once a tiara is handed down, officially, it stays with that woman for life. It's a sacred transfer, sealed by the monarch. And when Queen Elizabeth gave the lover's knot to Catherine, it wasn't just an act of protocol. It was a choice. A message. One that didn't need words. The tiara would never sit on Camilla's head, not because of hierarchy, but because of history. That chapter was closed. And in the world of royalty, where every gesture is deliberate, tiaras often speak louder than titles. That night, Catherine didn't have to say anything. She simply walked into the room, the lover's knot shimmering above her brow, and the crowd fell silent. Phones lit up. Social media exploded. "She looks like Diana," they wrote. "She is Diana's legacy." The diamonds caught the light, but it was the emotion behind them that burned into the public's memory. They didn't just see a princess. They saw a continuation, a bridge from what was lost to what could be again. For Camilla, it was a silent heartbreak. She had waited decades to be seen as more than the other woman. She endured relentless headlines, cold public receptions, and years in Diana's shadow. Yet through it all, she remained by Charles's side, playing her part dutifully. She didn't ask for affection. She earned her place through patience and resilience. And now, crowned queen consort, one might expect that to be enough. But in that moment, it wasn't. Because Catherine didn't have to fight for love. She already had it. And that, in the royal world, where love is rarely simple and affection is often measured in silence, was everything. No press release was issued. No royal aide stepped forward to explain the choice. But the whispers grew louder. Why not Camilla? Isn't she the queen? The answer didn't lie in protocol or seniority. It lay in something deeper. Connection. Emotion. The collective memory of a world that had never fully let go of Diana, and now saw her reflected in the grace and poise of Catherine. Some palace insiders believe the decision to gift Catherine the tiara was one of Queen Elizabeth's final messages. A quiet endorsement, not just of status, but of soul. Not everyone is trusted to carry the past. But Catherine, with her gentle composure and quiet strength, was chosen. Not just in name but in heart. Camilla, meanwhile, continued to wear tiaras from the Queen Mother's collection. Historic, respected, dignified. They represented legacy and loyalty. But they didn't make hearts skip a beat. Catherine's did. Her jewels weren't just seen, they were felt. Each glint of pearl and diamond whispered Diana's name. And that night, there was no need for confrontation. There was no feud, no loud drama. Just one tiara, worn by one woman, and everything shifted. Catherine became the image that lingered in the public's mind. Her photo took over the headlines. The applause at the event, though polite for all, swelled slightly louder when she entered the room. Somewhere behind the palace walls, those in power took notice. Not with alarm, but with understanding. Because in royalty, where change happens slowly and symbols hold more weight than speeches, the smallest gesture can mean everything. And nothing in that world is ever random. Not even a tiara. So while Camilla carried the title, it was Catherine who carried the narrative. And that's what the world remembered. A woman who didn't chase the spotlight, but inherited its warmth all the same. A woman who didn't wear power, but wore remembrance. Who stepped into history not to rewrite it, but to honor it. And in that moment, Diana wasn't just a memory. She was there, glinting softly from the tiara Catherine wore. And the world, once again, was watching. No one said it outright, but the contrast was striking. Camilla, dressed in traditional jewels, represented duty and history. Catherine, with Diana's tiara, carried something deeper. Emotion, legacy, hope. And even though they stood side by side, it felt like a quiet battle of symbols. The past and future clashing, not with words, but with heirlooms. Experts noticed. Headlines noticed. And the palace? Well, it stayed silent. But the message had already been sent. Catherine didn't need a crown to make an impact. That tiara told the world exactly who she was, and where the monarchy might be headed next. She had spent years trying to win over a nation that once saw her as the outsider, the woman who came after Diana. Camilla followed every royal rule with precision. She showed up, smiled politely, lent her voice to countless charities, and stood loyally beside King Charles through scandal, illness, and transition. Slowly, the public had begun to soften. They didn't cheer, but they didn't boo either. It was enough. Or so she thought. But that one night changed everything. When Princess Catherine stepped out wearing the Cambridge lover's knot tiara, it was as if time folded in on itself. The sparkle of the diamonds triggered something deeper than admiration. It reopened wounds. Social media lit up instantly. "She looks like Diana," one user posted. "She carries her spirit." But alongside the admiration came a tidal wave of memory. Photos of Diana flooded the timelines. Tributes, heartbreak stories, and old interviews resurfaced. People remembered the pain. They remembered how it all began, how Diana cried in silence, how betrayal echoed in the palace halls, and how Camilla's name was never far from the whispers. "History doesn't forget," someone wrote. "Some crowns carry more than diamonds." Inside the palace, the mood reportedly turned icy. According to insiders, King Charles was deeply rattled. "He didn't expect this reaction," said one aide. "It brought back ghosts he thought were long buried." And at the center of it was Camilla, once again tangled in a narrative she'd spent decades trying to escape. That tiara, Diana's tiara, had reignited something raw. It wasn't just about beauty or fashion, it was about memory, loyalty, and unfinished emotion. Camilla, sources say, was shaken. She began to question everything: how royal jewels were allocated, whether tradition still mattered, or if emotion had now taken the throne. For decades, tiaras were handed out based on rank, protocol, and seniority. But suddenly, the rules didn't feel so solid. Feelings had entered the equation. The lover's knot wasn't just a piece of jewelry. It was a symbol of Diana's love, pain, and enduring connection to the people. And in that moment, Camilla felt invisible. "She has the title," said one royal staffer, "but not the heart of the people." A brutal truth, whispered behind palace walls. The attention had turned, and it wasn't coming back. Catherine's photo was on every front page. Her image, gentle, regal, familiar, had reignited something the public thought they lost. Camilla's presence that night went mostly unnoticed. "It's hard to wear a crown," another insider said, "when no one is looking at you." Camilla reportedly began rethinking her public image. Some say she even questioned wearing certain royal jewels altogether, worried that each shimmer might stir old memories or fan new flames. Because now, every gem came with weight. Every sparkle cast a shadow. And yet Catherine said nothing. No statements. No comments. No subtle digs. Just grace. Just stillness. Those close to her say it was never meant to provoke. "She wore it for Diana," one friend shared. "Not to overshadow Camilla, but to honor the woman who came before her." And maybe that's what made it so powerful. Catherine didn't need to claim the spotlight. It found her on its own. Her quiet strength, her respectful silence, her ability to carry both tradition and transformation, spoke volumes. The world saw it. And they didn't just cheer, they believed in her. "She wears the crown of the past and the hope of tomorrow," one admirer tweeted. And that single thought echoed in every corner of the internet. Camilla may have the crown, the throne, the ceremonies, but Catherine has something harder to earn: the people's trust, their memory, their love. And in the monarchy, that's everything. Now, behind palace doors, there is a quiet tension. Not a war, but a shift. A delicate balancing act between tradition and change. Every future tiara will be chosen more carefully. Every public appearance will be more calculated. Because the truth is clear, Catherine is no longer just a duchess or a princess. She is the face of a new era, the bridge between legacy and tomorrow. And not every crown is made of gold. Some are made of memories. Like and subscribe the channel for more interesting updates.